We're going to talk about warming up. We're going to talk about some of my favorite dynamic movements, activations. We're going to talk about why we warm up, and I'm going to take you through what my typical warm-up looks like. So thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looks like we have several people tuning in now. And if you're going to join me for the warm-up part, you might want to go grab your paddle. I'm going to talk for another minute before we get started or more, so you have time to go grab your paddle. And also, if you want to join us for the warm-up, make sure you get yourself into a place where you have some space around you to move, to swing your paddle. You're not going to be hitting things. So yeah, get your paddle, get yourself in a place where you can swing it around. Maybe not all the way around, but yeah, I don't want anybody knocking over lamps and fans and stuff, so maybe outside is best. Then I'm going to talk about three things today. I'm going to talk about why we warm up. I'm going to talk about, I'm going to put these glasses on because, there we go. I'm going to talk about why we warm up, why it's important to warm up. I'm going to talk about, I'm going to take you through like a 10-minute warm up, what would be my normal warm up. It's not going to be an exhaustive set of all the warm-ups that you could possibly do. It's just a few of my favorites that I want to show you and take you through today. And then I'm going to leave time at the end for a little Q&A session. So that's what's on the topic board for today. So let's jump in. Why do we warm up? And again, feel free to comment, feel free to question. I'm doing questions at the end, so anytime you have a question, just throw it in the comments box, because sometimes those are delayed, and when you write them and when I actually see them. And then, if you want to add something to what I have to say, or, just let's interact and let's be here together. So why we warm up? Several reasons. We want to get our blood flowing. We literally want to heat up our body. We literally want to warm up our body from the inside. So blood gets pumping, body temperature rising. Those are two of the goals of warming up. And some of the best ways to do that is to just move, some gentle cardio. Any type of gentle cardio that gets your heart rate elevated is a great first step to a warm-up. And then for paddling, I do it a little bit differently. Usually I do that part at the end. Typically, traditionally, you would do that first thing as you would get your heart rate moving. And so that's why I do some of the exercises that I do that I'll show you. But yeah, get your blood flowing, raise your body temperature, get your heart rate up. Get yourself warm, literally. So then another reason why we warm up is to lubricate our joints and our muscle tissues. We want to get things, not just our body not just our body moving, but like all of the parts of our body moving. When we're asking it to do something, especially when we're asking it to do something at an intensity, it needs to be primed for that. So dynamic movements, ballistic movements, this is about range of motion, not necessarily about flexibility or mobility, although those are things that definitely come into play more so for recovery and cooling down than warming up. But and in terms of lubricating your joints, your muscle tissues, the reason why you do dynamic, which means moving through range of motion, and ballistic, which means doing things, which I'll show you, we'll do a couple of, which means doing things with, what's the right word here? Which means doing things to the end range of motion quite quickly, quite explosively. That's the word I was looking for, explosive. And we don't want to do, when our warm-up, we don't want to do much static or passive stretching. We don't actually want to be relaxing the muscles and the ligaments and the joints. We really want to be lubricating them, getting them moving, getting them active. So, and then the last part of why we're warming up and what we're accomplishing in our warm-up is and this is part of the cardio part that comes in, and what I'll talk about why I do this at the end of my warm-up as a paddler, is we're activating our aerobic system, right? So this is an endurance sport, for the most part, and so our aerobic system needs time to really activate, to really start going, oh, okay, I need to switch on here. I need to start producing energy with this oxygen that's coming in because I have a steady amount of energy that I need to be pumping out. And so the body needs time to really switch into that, oh, okay, we're in that state, that aerobic state where I'm taking in oxygen and I'm producing energy efficiently, effectively. So that happens in a proper warm-up as well. So, and that has a lot to do with how you're breathing and also doing that properly. Yes, your heart rate, sorry, there's cars going by, I hope that's not too loud. Your heart rate's going to get elevated in that as well. So, questions about any of that so far? It's a quiet group this morning. Questions about any of the reasons why we would warm up, or clarifications on any of those three things I just said, which was blood flowing, raising body temperature, lubricating joints and muscles, and then activating your aerobic system. Cool. So if you have your paddle and you want to join me, great. If not, if you want to save this video for later and you want to do it before your next paddle and take me on your phone, and that's cool too. So I'll just take you through what some of the warm-ups are that I do. And first and foremost, again, we want to activate, I'm going to just do some arm swings, so you can just follow along. I'm going to talk while I am doing this. So if I wasn't going to go for a paddle, I would actually go for a little bit of a jog. I would hop on a bike. I would grab a jump rope. I would literally start jumping. I would literally start moving my body. And you can do that here too, because we do want to get our blood flowing. We do want to get our body temperature up. So jumping, I'm swinging my arms just up and down. They're like really loose. It's like I'm trying to like shake something off of my wrists. My wrists are shaking. My arms are shaking. And then I'm going to make them a little less loose, and I'm going to go straight up and down. And I'm really swinging them down. I'm going to do some arm circles. I'm going to roll the shoulders up, down, and back, up, down, and back. I'm going to keep the back of the neck long. No. Really no. Good boy. So shoulders up, down, and back of the neck long. I'm going to start paying attention to how I'm breathing. Breathing big into the rib cage, big into the diaphragm. I'm going to do the shoulders the other way. I'm going to bring them back, up, forward. So shoulder joint, back of the neck long. Nice deep breaths. So I do some arm circles. I do some arm swings. I do some arms up and down. And then I'm going to do some twists. And again, my arms are, and my wrists are, and my hands are just really relaxed here. So I'm like literally slapping myself on the back. Well, not intentionally, but my hands are so loose, that's what's happening. This is also starting to initiate a little bit of a rotation. Rotation being really important in our paddle stroke as well. Cool. So we're going to continue with that twist. We're going to add the leg. So I'm twisting onto my feet. I'm going to a pointed toe. Step back so you can see me a little bit. I want you to be able to see my feet. Cool. So my feet's more important than seeing my head at the moment. Cool. I'm going to grab my paddle. And I'm going to continue to twist. And now I'm not going to be coming up on my feet and pointing my toes. I'm going to actually just be twisting from the hips up. feeling rotation in the spine, in the upper spine in our thoracic, which is where we really want to be rotating from for the most part as paddlers. Cool. I'm going to bring it behind my back, and I'm going to take my feet a little bit wider. And then I'm really going to just see how far, without swinging, I can get end range of motion with my hips pointing forward. And just going to that end and pushing just a little bit and breathing. And my head can go and follow my chest as it twists. Cool. I'm going to take the paddle in my hands and I'm going to choke up really high because I'm going to actually start swinging my paddle here, and if I'm holding it here, it's going to be hitting the ground. So I'm going to grab it like really far down, and I'm going to just do some swings. And I'm rotating now this way. And when I swing up, I'm feeling a nice stretch on this side, like I would in my rotation paddling. So I'm just swinging back and forth to really feel that range of motion. So it's kind of like I'm setting up to take a stroke every time, but I'm exaggerating that, and I'm letting that be really fluid. But I'm definitely feeling that stretch and that side of my body opening up. And then I'm going to stop, and I'm going to place my paddle down, and I'm going to just, with downward pressure, I want you guys to check in if you're doing this, or whenever you are doing this, check in with swing, down, and with downward pressure, where do you feel activated? And so checking in with, do you feel that in your shoulders? Do you feel that in your arms? Do you feel that in your triceps? Do you feel it in your lats? Do you feel like, where do you feel that? So let's do a couple more swings and reset. And then we're going to go boom, boom, downward pressure. You want to be feeling this in that lat. And if you're not, I want you to take a slight bend in your elbow, and I want you to pull the elbow down. I want you to feel that in your lat. So since we're here, so one thing that I also really love to do is activate the lats before a paddle, and let the shoulders be relaxed, right? So paddle out in front of me, I did my swing, downward pressure. I want to be feeling this in my lat, in my posterior chain, not in my anterior chain, not in the front, not in the shoulder. And if I'm not, I'm going to bend that elbow, I'm going to draw it down, and I'm going to squeeze here. Another way you can do that if you're not feeling that is you can take your elbow and squeeze it into your side, and you should feel this underneath the arm activating. That's what we're looking to activate. So let's do the other side. Choking up on our paddle, doing our swings. Nice side stretch on the other side now, opening up that side. Make sure you're breathing, make sure you're opening the rib cage, but not hyper flexing or extending through the spine. We're rotating through the spine, but we're not flexing and extending through the spine. Good, and then we're going to stop. We're going to put that paddle down, downward pressure, and I'm going to see how I feel it. And you notice I'm more or less in my paddle stance. Doing this, my feet are about as wide apart as they would be on my board, and my knees are bent, my ankles are bent. So it's not exactly like on my board, but it's a little bit like it would be on my board with that downward pressure. I want to be feeling this in my lat. If I'm not, I'm going to take a slight bend to the elbow. I'm going to pull the elbow down. If not, I'm going to draw that elbow into my side. And I really want to, and another way you can do that is you can punch straight down, and you want to feel this under the arm, not on top of the arm, not in front of the arm. So one more. Let's check and make sure those, which side was I on? This side. Let's check and make sure those lats are activated, and that's the primary muscle we feel with that downward pressure. So arm swings, twists, rotation we just opened up. Now let's work on the legs a little bit. You can just hold your paddle in front of you, and you're going to hold your paddle in front of you. I'm going to turn sideways. We're going to do some hip hinging. Feet are hip distance apart or however wide they would be on your board. And we're going to activate the backs of the legs. So we are going to unlock the knees, unlock the ankles, and we're going to hinge by pulling the hips back like somebody has us from the belt and they're pulling back, and then we're pressing from the back to the legs to come back up, and somebody's pulling us back by the belt, and they're pushing us up. And so what's happening is I'm hinging. As the hips pull back, the chest is naturally lowering down, but I'm not bending, I'm not flexing, right? The spine is staying in this neutral position as I'm going back and forward. So what I'm doing is I'm activating the backs of the legs, which are our primary driver when we're paddling is actually our legs and the bottom of our lower body and not our upper body. One thing that can help with this, if you don't feel it in the backs of the legs, is to push down into your feet. And isometrically mean doing it without actually moving. Externally rotate, so you're pressing more into that pinky toe edge of the foot. You're going to press out from the knees and the hips. So there's this external, and that should help you to, as you pull back now. So you're externally rotating at the feet. You're pulling the hips and the knees wide. That should help you to feel the glutes activated when you pull back. And check and see if your feet naturally go way far out or way far in. Most people don't stand in. Most people stand like this. And if they are, see if you can bring them back to parallel and then still press outward and pull back. That should help you feel the glutes. Okay, so we did some double leg hip hinges. We activated the backs of the legs. From here, we're going to come as far down as we can without any flexing in the spine. So this is as far back as we can go, but from just pulling the hips back, we're going to reach the arms out in front of us to counterbalance. We're going to take the hands double shoulder width really wide on the paddle. And we're going to pull the elbows back, and we're going to pull the back of the neck long. And so it's like we're doing some shoulder slides here. We're going to reach out, back of the neck long, we're going to pull the elbows back, pull the paddle back to the head. It's okay, if the paddle's going in front, that's okay. Eventually, we're open enough to where it goes behind our head. I'm not there right now this morning. One thing that can help with this is the feet going a little bit wider. Again, keep pulling those hips back, keep the spine neutral. Elbows are pulling back, and we're trying to keep parallel the plane between the elbows and the wrists. We're trying to keep the back of the neck long, and we're breathing into the rib cage. Should feel this in the middle of your back. Should feel this in the lower the lower trap going down into the middle of the back. Here we're activating. Down here is where you should feel this. Yeah? I see some comments. So, cool. All right. So we did some hip hinges. We did some shoulder slides. I do about like 20 of everything. And then I'm going to, you can still hold on to your paddle. We might need it for balance in a minute, but we're not actively using it at the moment. You're going to take about a walking stride distance. The longer the distance, the more difficult this is. The closer the feet, the less challenging this is. You're going to turn both feet to point in the front. So you see how my back foot is turned out? I'm going to turn it so that the toes are pointing forward, not out, right? So both toes are pointing forward, hips are pointing forward. And there is a bend in the front knee. And the back heel is lifted. And I'm going to lower it down. I'm going to feel a nice stretch in the front of my ankle here. And I'm going to press up, and I'm going to, it's actually a stretch in the calf. It's an activation in the front of the ankle, and I'm going to press up. So one thing that we use a lot when we're paddling is actually our ankles. And so this is warming up the ankles. I'm pulling the legs towards one another. Hips are both pointing forward, toes are both pointing forward, and I'm pressing that back heel down and up to really feel that I'm warming up that ankle. Cool. I'm going to do about 12 of those. I'm going to do the other side. Toes are both going to be pointing forward, so I'm going to spin that back heel. I'm looking in a mirror. I'm going to spin that back heel out. I'm going to lift and lower, squeezing the legs towards one another. So the front foot is pulling back, the back foot is pulling forward, hips are forward, lower and lift. Nice stretch in the ankle, calf, heel, foot of the back leg. Cool. So now, let's warm them up even more. Again, you can hold on to your paddle. You might need it for stability, or you might need to hold on to something even more stable, or you might not need it at all. We're going to work on waking up our stabilizers now, because when we drop on our board, our stabilizers start firing, and especially if we're jumping into choppy water, like if we feel already activated in those systems, it's so much easier for our body to jump on and do it, right? That's one of the points of warming up, right? So let's warm up our stabilizers. So what we're going to do is you're going to take more or less the same stance that you just had. You're going to come up on those back toes, and you're going to, level one is you're just going to keep that back toe down. And instead of doing these, we were doing these 2-leg hip hinges where we're pulling the hips back. We're now just pulling back from that front leg and then forward. And if you're not holding your paddle, you're going to reach opposite, you're going to reach opposite foot, hand to that front foot. So level one is with your back heels down. Level two is with that back heel lifted. You're going to keep both hips pointing towards the ground. You're going to have a bend in that front knee, and the hip is going to pull back. The spine's going to stay neutral. I'll show you this way so you can see. What's going to want to happen is this back leg's going to want to open up to the side. Keep the toes pointing down. You should feel this in the back of that front leg, and a lot in your ankles, in your hamstrings, everything that's working to stabilize you as you go down and up. We're going to do about 12 on one side. We're going to go to the other side. Again, you can hold on to your paddle if you need it. You can keep that back foot down, and you can do these with the back foot down. We're going to be pulling the front hip back. You should feel this in the backs of the legs and in the stabilizers. Both knees have a bend in them, especially that standing leg. And the toes are pointing forward. Cool. Woo! We're going to do one more on this side. So we'll do about 10 or 12 on each side. So we warmed up and lubricated joints in our upper body. We've warmed up our rotation, our sides, our hips, our legs. And at this point, I would jump on my board, and I would not just go and just start killing it. I would start out slow, really feeling and sort of overreaching, not overreaching, but I like to exaggerate my stroke a little bit when I'm warming up, because I really want to feel again that I'm finding that range of motion, and then feeling really comfortable as I start to speed up and sink into it. So another way to say this is usually the first 10 minutes of paddling. I always do 10 minutes of paddling before I begin any workout, and several of those minutes are almost like I'm doing drills. So the first 10 minutes and the last 10 minutes of your paddling definitely want to be warm up and cool down, where you're really focusing on your technique and some of the other things that we spoke about, like making sure that you're getting your heart rate up before you begin, your body temperature is elevated before you ask yourself to do anything really with intensity, or especially with effort at your range of motion. That's something that you really want to warm up to, and that in this 10 minutes where you're warming up before you start your paddle, your workout, you are activating your aerobic system, and especially before you start a race. You really want to make sure your aerobic system is activated, because So when you start a race and you didn't warm up properly, and you start and you feel like great for like the first like 3 minutes, and then by like 5 minutes in you just like can't catch your breath, right? One of the reasons that most likely happened can happen if you feel like you should be able to be doing what you're doing but you just can't at that moment. One of the reasons is not having properly activated your aerobic system. And you ever feel like, another way to get you to recognize this is like, you ever feel like, gosh, after 15-20 minutes into a race or a workout, you're like, oh, I finally like feel like I caught my groove, yeah? Because your aerobic system was finally activated and you were finally warmed up. So if you're one of those people that know like, oh gosh, like I just, for the first 15 minutes I feel like blah, and then like after 20 minutes I feel good, right? You probably need a longer warm up, or you're maybe just not warming up properly, right? So those are some of the reasons why that's important. So I have time for a Q&A. And does anybody have any questions? I'm going to wait a couple of minutes before I sign off and see if there's any questions. Otherwise, that was really fun. Thanks for warming up with me. That was maybe longer than 10 minutes because I was explaining things, but once you get to learn some of these, and again, not an exhaustive list of exercises by any means, just a few of my favorites that I've been doing most recently to hit some of the key areas and really feel like I've moved my body before I jumped on my board for a paddle. So that's the simple way to say it. Marianne, yeah, you're so welcome. I love this stuff. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for tuning in, Danielle, David, Arthur, Sonder. Greetings from the Netherlands. Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much to SIC for having us on this platform, for hosting Talk Stories. You can find more of them on the SIC Maui YouTube page. You can find me at Seychelles SUP on Instagram and Facebook. You can write me messages there. I love your questions. And I am doing, I might as well say it here and now, a camp if anybody's into endurance paddling. Even if I'm doing a camp at Chattajack, it's actually more of a retreat style camp at Chattajack this year. And so if you're registered for Chattajack, perfect. If you're not, and you're still interested in endurance paddling, long distance, sort of ultra paddling, and at the same time you know that when it comes to endurance, this and this matter just as much, if not more, than this. That's really what we're going to be diving into, is a lot of the physical aspects, but also the mind and soul aspects of what's going on when we are driven to paddle like that, or how do we have our best performance when we have an event, a race like that. Something that I've been really working on for the last several years, and I love sharing the knowledge that I have with others. So if you're interested in doing a retreat with me, working on technique, sports nutrition, mindset for endurance paddling, reach out. And I don't see any questions, so I'm going to sign off. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.